Hello and welcome to Nature Source Care. Today I was going to discuss the subject of emotional cleansing and present 3 different writing techniques to free the heart, mind, and spirit. So let's get into it. Note of caution beforehand, the information presented here is for educational purposes only and should not be considered medical advice. For any symptoms that persist or worsen, please consult with a qualified medical professional. It is always best to determine the root cause of any disease and to develop a comprehensive treatment plan. While natural remedies can be very effective, they may not be appropriate for everyone or as a single therapy, so please keep that in mind. So, emotional cleansing, why might somebody be interested in this? Well, I have found in my practice as a naturopathic physician that people often can feel stuck in their life, but don't seem to find a way to change, or nothing seems to change. And this is usually because people aren't really looking deeply enough for the root of the cause. Like, what's the true problem here? And I've also found in my practice that many people, they go through fairly traumatic, situations in their life, but they don't really know how to process that pain, disappointment, sense of loss, betrayal, all those really hard, sharp, difficult, yucky feelings. And so typically what I find is that people will shut down, or they'll just immerse themselves in something else to really distract themselves from that pain, rather than process it, like really digest it, process it, and move on. And sometimes, like if they are a workaholic, they'll just dive into work, and they'll work, and then years down the line, all of a sudden that attempt to not address the issue, sometimes that issue when other things happen and they're, how do I say, like the person is being challenged, then all this old stuff that they've kind of stuffed down starts to come out, and they can't control it the way that they controlled it through overworking, for example. And so what I found too is that a lot of times I have patients who are involved in talk therapy, and that's very helpful for many people. Sometimes though, the talk therapy only goes so far. And I've had patients that are actually therapists themselves, so they are therapists, they've been through therapy for years, they know the issues, they know the circumstances, it's all kind of organized well in their mind, they understand the whole situation. But the thing is, it's like it's still there's something still lingering. I tend to call this like a emotional energetic residue. Whatever the event was, whatever the conversation was, there's still something lingering that's hard to get at, and it's hard to get rid of it so that, again, you can be free and clear of this energy, and it holds people back in their mind and heart and spirit. And these, emotional cleansing and that sort of thing, it's sort of like forgiveness work in a way. But the thing is, like with forgiveness work, it's not about saying that whatever happened was okay, especially if it was, really, something really appalling. Most people would find appalling. It's just literally about finally freeing yourself from whatever was done or said or you experienced or whatever traumatic thing. It could be a hurricane knocked down your house or something. It doesn't even have to be like from another person. It could be, what some people might think of like coming from a higher power or the universe or something like that. It's just about finally getting to the root of it, processing it, letting it go so you can move on and be free and clear of it. So that's why somebody might be interested in emotional cleansing. So let's go through the 3 techniques, and the techniques I'm presenting today are all writing techniques. And even if you're not a writer, because sometimes I get that kind of pushback from people like, oh, I don't like to write. Well, again, wait for the third one. You might be interested in that. So the first technique is where you write 2 letters. And the first letter, what you do, you take out a sheet of paper or your computer. A lot of people want to write on the computer. And you write, "Dear so-and-so," whoever this might be. It could be yourself. It could be the universe. It could be your neighbor or whoever it is. "Dear so-and-so," and the content of the letter is, "I am angry at you because blank." And you write and write and write. You vent and vent and vent. You get it all out there. You curse. There's no filter here. This is just about getting it all out. Instead of stuffing it down with, like I said, overworking or too much Facebook or whatever it is. It's about tapping into this deeper emotional vein to finally let the stuff heal up and out. Okay. So, "Dear so-and-so, I am angry at you because," and you write and write and write until you can't write anymore, and then you sign off on the letter. Okay. And then the second letter is, and you can do this one after the other, or you might wait a day or two to do the second letter. The reason why I like this technique, as you'll see, is that the first letter is about spilling and releasing all this like negative pent-up energy that you might still be holding on to. The second letter is about offering some balance to the situation, because once we allow that old toxic emotional energy to be released, it allows us to be a little bit calmer typically and more balanced and open to the possibility that there was actually something to be grateful for through this whole situation. So the second letter is, "Dear so-and-so," again, your neighbor, yourself, the universe, whoever, or whatever. "I am grateful because," and then you fill in the blanks. And it doesn't have to be long. It might be a lot shorter than the first letter, especially if you have a lot of energy on this still. But it's just, when you write 2 letters like this, it offers you a more balanced view, a more balanced perspective on whatever occurred. But you're tapping into the emotions of it. This isn't about writing in perfect, penmanship. Well, I guess people don't really write letters anymore. They're typing on the computer. It's not about writing a nice and clean and polite letter. This is about letting it rip. This is about digging in, venting, getting it all out, okay, once and for all, hopefully. Sometimes, though, with these things, if it's a long, chronic situation with somebody, for example, or it's a really, horrific thing, you might be able to get a layer or 2 off of the whole situation. You might be able to release a layer or 2. You might not be able to get the whole thing out in one go if it's a long or deep situation. But at least you're starting to release some of it. Okay, so that's technique number 1, the 2-letter technique. Technique number 2 is you write 3 letters, and this is on 3 consecutive days. So the first letter, now this is different, as you'll see. All 3 days you're writing, "Dear so-and-so," again, your neighbor, yourself, the universe, whoever, whatever. "I am angry at you because blank," and you just write and write and write and rip and curse or whatever you need to do. Stab your pen or something into the paper, bang on your computer, whatever. You're just trying to tap into the emotions. It doesn't have to make sense. It doesn't have to be complete sentences. You can just rip and roar. It's just about releasing the emotions, okay? So when I've done this technique, for example, the first day I wrote it, "Dear so-and-so, I'm angry at you because," and when I started writing this letter, I was like, I don't know, I feel like I've dealt with it. I don't feel like I have any energy on it. But I was like, hey, let me just try this technique, just to see what happens. So I did, and once I started writing, stuff started flowing. I started writing and stuff started coming out. And I was like, oh, I didn't even realize I had all this energy left on the situation. And so I wrote, and then I signed off on the letter, and I was like, okay, that was interesting and surprising, but okay, cool. And then the next day, I had to do the same thing, and I was like, wow, well, I was surprised I had anything to write yesterday. I thought I got, I was surprised I had anything left to write. I got out some more stuff, but now I really feel like I don't have anything left to write, but let me try. So I started the second letter. Dear so-and-so, I'm angry at you because... And surprisingly, I was writing more stuff. And I was writing for a while, and then finally I felt like I had tapped out, and so I signed off, and I was like, wow, that was really surprising that I still had, even after the letter from the day before, still had stuff to write. I realized though that the first letter I wrote to a person, and even though the second letter I addressed to the same person, what I realized when I reread the letter was that it wasn't actually to the person. It was to, God, the universe, source, whatever you want to call it, because I understood that this person had issues. But I was like, okay, universe, why did you put this person in my path? So, it's sort of like, why, what, happened there? So that was interesting. That was insightful. And then, so then the third day comes, and I got the third letter to write. Again, the same thing. I'm like, wow, I was surprised by the first letter, second letter. I'm like, I don't know if I have anything left, but I was like, let me try. So, dear so-and-so, I am angry at you because... And I was writing. It was flowing. More stuff came out. And I was like, okay. And then I felt tapped out, and I signed off. And when I reread this letter... I realized that even though I had addressed it to person A, person X or whatever, all three letters were addressed to person X, but really only the first letter was to person X, the second letter was to the universe, the third letter actually was to myself, because I realized on some level that I had allowed myself to hang on to some of this energy, not consciously, not that I thought I was, I'm going to hang on to this anger forever, or something, hang on to this grudge forever. But there was something there about allowing the situation to still have some power over me. And that was insightful and helpful. So this second technique may be better or may resonate with you more if you still got a lot of energy on a situation, something really chronic, something that's just, you still roll your eyes at, you don't even kind of want to go there, because this helps get actually kind of several layers off potentially of the situation. And then the third week, so this one might be, more interesting to you if you're not quote unquote a writer. But this technique, what you do is you get 5 sheets of paper, or you can use your computer, the equivalent of your computer. And you're going to do this for 7 days straight. Okay, so what you do is on each line you write, I forgive you. So again, person X, universe, it could be yourself, for fill in the blank. So I forgive myself for being angry. I forgive myself for going to this place. I forgive myself for getting involved in the situation. I forgive myself for getting involved in this relationship. Whatever it is. But each line is, I forgive you, the universe, myself for this, that, or whatever. Okay? So it's like more of a bullet point, kind of thing. If you can't think of anything, you write, I forgive you, the universe, myself, for everything. I forgive myself for everything. I forgive myself for everything. And you just keep writing until you fill up the 5 pages. That's a lot. And this can be pretty intense. Actually, all these techniques can be intense. So make sure you have some Kleenex nearby. Make sure you've got your support stuff around you. The thing is, if you do this technique, or actually any of the techniques on yourself, make sure you're doing it with the intention of releasing and moving on. If you happen to be a very self-critical person, if you tend to beat yourself up, this is not an opportunity to do that again. Okay, you do that plenty, in life, probably more than you even realize, because it's so natural if that's kind of your habitual thought process. This is about up and out. Okay. If, again, this is for 7 days, so if you skip a day, start over. Again, if you're not a writer type, this might be more appealing to you than writing letters, for example. And this might also be a better technique if you need to just jumpstart on something. If you really need to just do something quick, because again, maybe even thinking about writing a letter seems too involved or something like that. So, there you go. And I'm not sure that I mentioned, but for all these techniques, you want to make sure that this is not stuff, whatever you're writing here is not to be sent or given to, if you're writing it to somebody else, it's not supposed to be given to your neighbor. Okay, this is for you. It's not about them. This is about clearing your energy and you moving on with your life. It has nothing to do with them, correcting them, showing them how they wronged you, or, you know, whatever. This is just about you getting clear. So you can burn these letters, bury them, rip them up, shred them, whatever. That's what I would suggest you do, because you don't necessarily want to take all this, you know, venom, anger, upset, or whatever, and start spreading it around to other people's lawns. Because typically, if somebody has done something to you, usually it's, you know, sometimes it's by accident. They're good people. It's by accident. They meant no harm. Sometimes people are very unconscious, and if you send a letter like this, they're just going to get more upset and more angry and more bitter and potentially more hurtful. They, you know, they're already not processing their stuff very well. So if you hand them a letter like this, it's unlikely that they'll suddenly become, you know, enlightened by receiving this. So I would suggest destroying whatever you end up writing here. Okay, deleting it or whatever. Again, this is just for you. Anything else here? I think that might be it. So there you go. You know, again, I would consider these techniques. Sometimes, again, people don't realize that they have energy on a situation. Like one person that comes to mind was a patient who, he was, you know, midlife guy, working, living on his own, sort of seeing somebody, but it wasn't that serious. He had been married, was divorced. Apparently his wife actually had an affair with a good buddy of his. And even though it was years later, you know, he was still struggling. He still wasn't living a happy life. You know, and they had moved on. I mean, you know, they were a happy couple, and you know, his daughter with this woman, saw both of them, you know, as dad and dad number two, you know, like everybody had moved on except for him. And so I'd suggested these techniques to him, and he looked at me like, seriously, lady, are you, like, how could I possibly forgive this? You know, clearly I was wronged. And I'm like, hey, I'm not saying it was right, but you're the one who's still suffering, and this is years later. Everybody else has moved on. They don't seem to be struggling with this the way you are. So you might consider it. I'm like, there's no harm done, typically, you know, by doing something like this. So why don't you give it a shot? And he did. You know, again, even though he seemed very resistant to the idea when he left the office, I was like, I don't know if he's going to do it, but you never know. He came back next visit like a month or two later, and he was beaming, smiling from ear to ear. And I was like, oh, wow, what good news do you have? And he's like, well, I really didn't like the idea that you presented to me, but I decided to give it a shot. And he said, I did feel like there was some sort of letting go or release or something. I don't know what words he used. And within a few weeks of doing this technique, he actually reconnected with a woman that he knew from the past, that he'd always kind of liked, found attractive or whatever. And they had a conversation, and they were dating, and now they were about to go on vacation together. And it's just like, I see often that once somebody allows themselves to use techniques like this, again, their life just starts to be moving forward. Now, his case is like very dramatic and kind of obvious. Sometimes too, what will happen is, even if you, as I said, like burn these letters, shred these letters or whatever, you just do it for yourself and don't tell anybody about it. What's sort of interesting too is that sometimes it's almost like, again, because this is energy work, sometimes the person that you're writing to, like they might like sort of pop up in your life or send you an email or a text or something, and it's almost like it's acknowledgement that on some level they could feel the shift in the energy. It's kind of hard to describe otherwise. But in any case, if you do feel stuck, maybe if you don't feel stuck, but you don't feel like you're moving in your life the way you wish you could, you might consider some of these techniques. All right, so I hope you found this helpful, interesting as always. And until the next one, take care.